Well, hello then, I do hope you're all well. Now, when I saw our walking oxymoron, James Cleverly, was up for a Foreign Affairs Committee meeting this week, my first thought was, I wonder what our Labour MP Chris Bryant has in store for our new Foreign Secretary. Well, he started off with basically, who will be using the money to aid the rebuilding of Ukraine, so to speak, and also on the subject of Russian sanctions.
Yes, sure. Can I welcome Foreign Secretary and congratulations on being Foreign Secretary.
Thank you very much.
Can I just refer you? You and I have corresponded about the Abramovich money going to Ukraine. The letter you sent me the other day seemed to suggest that it's going to take some considerable period of time before that money is actually arriving in Ukraine and is being used by a charity. As I understand it, you're saying that somebody is setting up a charity in Ukraine. Who's setting it up?
It's an independent foundation, and it's established by humanitarian experts. But what I wouldn't want
Who are these humanitarian experts?
I can give you more details. I don't have the names here in front of me.
Can you guarantee that none of them are actually Mr. Abramovich's people?
Yes.
You're certain? They've not been employed by him, they're not his associates?
If you've got something you want to tell me, please tell me. But my working assumption is that they would be independent humanitarian experts.
Have you met them? Has there been a paper that you've had on this?
No, again, I mean, it's a question that sounds a bit like a statement. If there's something that you're suggesting has happened or not happened, then please do let me know and I'll look into it.
No, well, you're likely to know more about who's setting up this organisation. You said that there were some humanitarian experts. I just wonder who they are.
I don't have the names, but I'm sure.
So the key point is that for money to be moved to the foundation, a licence has to be issued by the Office of Financial Sanctions Implementation, as part of the Treasury, and they will make a judgment about the risks of sanctions circumvention. So that's the point at which that bit of the British system will take a view on the foundation and how it's established.
But there's a formal British charity already in place, run in coordination with the British government. Why can't the money just go straight into that? It could have been there now for months already. You could just write the cheque tomorrow.
Well, I would need to look into that. Generally, when things seem so blatantly easy that they're the obvious answer, but they're not being chosen, there's sometimes a reason why they're not being chosen. I don't know what that would be. If there's a mechanism that you think would be quicker, whilst also giving the protections that His Majesty's Treasury and us would require.
The government sponsors a body which is designed to bring together all the coordinating events, charitable work in Ukraine. I don't understand why it can't go straight into that. It's sponsored by your department.
Okay. Well, as I say, the foundation's being established under the framework that Sir Philip has outlined. I'm more than happy to look at other vehicles, but often things that seem that seem the very, very easy answer are not always the easiest answer.
And sometimes when people use words like as in your letter, it's because somebody's trying to hide something.
Well, if you're suggesting we're trying to hide something, please let me know what you think we're trying to hide.
Okay.
Because otherwise, your tone of question implies something, and I can't respond to implications. If you have a specific concern, please let me know, and I'll address this.
You give us the details of exactly how this foundation is being set up, and it'd be great if you could look at an alternative, swifter, because otherwise the danger is the money won't get to Ukraine until the end of next year or even the year after that.
Well,
that would obviously be a failure because Kherson needs rebuilding now, doesn't it?
So we're not waiting for this money in order to help the Ukrainians. I mean, just this afternoon, I signed an MOU to make sure that we can support them in their energy reconstruction, their energy supply. And the simple but sad truth is that even if the conflict were to stop today, Ukraine's requirement for international support will endure. So we are going to make sure the money gets them. We're going to make sure the money is useful. We're going to make sure the money is in no way in breach of our sanctions framework. And that's what we're looking to do.
Talking of sanctions, can you just explain why we have only sanctioned a fifth of the individuals and organisations that the United States of America has sanctioned?
Well, look, each country's sanction regime is different. It is a very unsophisticated metric just to say how many individuals have been sanctioned. Our sanctions As I say, each country works their sanctions regime in a slightly different way. Our sanctions have been incredibly effective. There was a reason why Vladimir Putin singled out the UK for criticism earlier on in the conflict, because our sanctions were hitting his money supply and hitting it hard. But our sanctions are done in coordination with our international partners. That's how they are the most effective. But this, I feel uncomfortable with this kind of, trying to play one-upmanship with regard to sanctions. We're all trying to achieve the same thing, which is to choke off the financial supply that is funding Putin's war in Ukraine. The conversations that I have at G7 and other international fora are about achieving that, and we'll work with our partners internationally to do that.
Well, there's various different bits of sanctioning that we do. Some of them are under Magnitsky sanctions, and that's the area where we are weakest. I think in Liz Truss's time as Foreign Secretary, there were only 3 people added to the list. And I just don't... what I'm trying to get at is I don't understand whether that's lack of capacity or you have come to a different determination about individuals. But, as I say, the United States of America and the EU have sanctioned 5 times as many people as we have, and that just seems odd. I grant that, perfect metric, it's not a perfect metric, but 5 times difference is a significant difference.
As I say, I mean, I don't think that is the most. Not only is it not the only metric, I don't think it's necessarily even the most useful metric. The impact of our sanctions has been very significant. As I say, we were singled out for a reason, and it's because our sanctions were really hurting. Our sanctions were doing what they were meant to do.
Well, forgive me, there's one place where our sanctions haven't, and I'll come back to you, cut through, which is human rights. So one of the great things about the Magnitsky sanctions is the ability to sanction those who profit from human rights abuses and to use it as a human rights tool around the world. Now, we haven't done that as a country. Is that something that you see as your aspiration over the next few years as Foreign Secretary, to really use that tool to shape human rights and minimise human rights abuses, or will we continue to use it more as a blunt tool nationally?
So I don't. Again, I don't think I agree with your description of it as being a blunt tool. We want to use the tools at our disposal when they are most appropriate, and it is right that we look at our human rights sanctions where they are appropriate. It's right that we look at other sanctions where they are most appropriate. We talk about which other countries do certain things. We base our sanctions on the information that we have against the legal thresholds that are in our legislation. Where we are able to share information with international partners, we do so. Where we are able to replicate sanctions that other countries have put in, we look to do so. And where we don't have where we're not on exactly the same page because of differentials in our legislation, we look to coordinate as closely as we can. As I say, there's not...
But we're not, it's an absence. We're not using them to push forward human rights and improve human rights around the world. Other countries are using them specifically for that outcome. So is that something you want to see us do? Because that was the whole point of widening the legislation, so that it could be used to reduce human rights abuses around the world, not just in worst case scenarios such as Ukraine. But we haven't done that meaningfully yet. So is that something you would like to see us do?
Well, I want to make sure that we use the most appropriate tool at our disposal.
Yeah.
When the human rights sanctions are the most appropriate tool, we of course will seek to use that. If there are other sanctions avenues that are more appropriate, we use that. And indeed, if there are ways of, ultimately preventing human rights abuses rather than responding to human rights abuses, that would always be our preferred option.
It just seems odd that we've used that tool less in relation to Hong Kong than the United States of America has. That seems bizarre. And the only explanation I can find for it is either Dominic Raab was very committed to this, and it was one of the things that he introduced. Liz Truss came in, wasn't interested in it, and now you're not sure whether you're interested in it. Or somebody thinks it's not an appropriate tool, in which case explain why it's not an appropriate tool. Or you haven't got capacity to be able to get through the listings adequately.
Well, as I said, we will seek to use the most appropriate tool in any given circumstance. I don't have any objection to any particular way of having an influence on the world stage, and where our human rights sanction regime is the most appropriate way of bringing about positive change, of course we will not hesitate to use that.
But there's another danger for us, which is that if the EU or America has sanctioned an individual and we choose not to, then there's a danger that all their activity comes to the UK rather than anywhere else. So we're not acting in cooperation with everybody else. But anyway,
No, you don't.
Okay,
I don't
fine.
think it's legitimate asking a question or making a question and start statement and then waving your hand so I don't answer. The point is we do coordinate our international sanctions with our international partners to make sure that we do not allow, and in the same way that there are individuals and entities that we have sanctioned that other countries have not, but we always seek to make sure.
Hardly any.
We always seek
Name
to
one.
where we.
Name somebody who's sanctioned by us and not by anybody else.
So I don't have a one in
There isn't
particular,
one.
but your contention there is not a single.
Pretty certain.
Okay.
Been through the list and pretty carefully.
Okay.
Anyway.
Right from the off, he looked shady and very uncomfortable, didn't he? Especially with who's going to use the money. Fancy not really knowing that. Well, actually, you can't really know everything, and chances are there may be nothing in it, and everything probably could be just hunky-dory. But I won't trust this government awash with Russian donors and Russian money, would you? And that nonsense about sanctions on Russia, being world-beating and robust, and all those are the words they usually do. Well, that's just utter laughable, isn't it? Even the chair of the select committee wasn't convinced, was she? And she's a Conservative. Oh, there'll be at least 2, possibly 3 of Chris Bryant, because in this committee meeting, he doesn't disappoint. But anyway, what do you guys think? Let me know in comments below, and until the next time, I shall bid you farewell and take care.